I guess my first audio project was building a crystal radio, and I suppose a lot of people ended up that way. I got a kit for Christmas. It was a birthday present from my mom, and I built this crystal radio, and I was really turned on by that. That was really fun. There were maybe 3 parts involved. And then the next thing, I got a transformer and some wire, and I put a light out in the tree, out in the woods, and I hooked up this rheostat that I got out of this car that was in the junkyard, and I made the light go up and down, and I thought that was really exciting too. So then I was kind of hooked on electronics. But as a kid, I really enjoyed music, and I did a lot of music listening, and on some very cheap headphones that I bought with my allowance. And then in high school, I found myself being quite involved in the theater program, and I built a speaker system for our auditorium, and I also operated the lighting, and I was actually offered the lead role in the high school play. It was Death of a Salesman, but I was more interested in doing the audio, so I did that instead. And I got progressively more interested in music as time went on, and I thought I wanted to get a career in working in a recording studio. So, but I wasn't going to get away without getting a university education. So then I was faced with, well, what would I study? And I decided to go into electrical engineering, and I did that at McGill University in Montreal. And when I graduated from university, I came to Toronto, and I went around to a whole bunch of studios, Sounds Interchange, Manta, a whole bunch of them, and I gave them my resume, and I said, I'd love to work here, and then I even went out to, I sent letters to Pinewood out in Vancouver and so on, and I got some very nice letters back saying, you know, if you'd like to come and push a broom, maybe we can find a job for you. And I decided not to do that, and I ended up working for Strand Century in Toronto. They had a division where they were doing audio installations. So the first audio job I worked on was the rewiring of the O'Keefe Center. And during that, after we got that installed, there were these fancy consultants who'd come over from England, and they'd put this big component audio system in place, lots of different drivers, JBL, the little radial phase plug high tweeter, and then there were biradial horns, and it was like a 4-way system. And I remember them agonizing over equalizing this system, and they spent weeks at it. And I was sitting through all of that, and then this show came into town called Beatlemania, which was using these boxes that were just a full-range box, and they threw them up on either side of the stage, and that sounded way better than this system that these guys had been agonizing over at the O'Keefe Center. And I kind of got really hooked at that point on what made for good sound. So I then worked for a number of different contracting companies for years, and the more I got into the audio business, the more I realized that there were some really big gaps in understanding and in the just the basic fundamentals of how interconnection worked. And that's when I decided to write my book and kind of really try and put paid to the issue of connectivity and grounding and how to build audio systems and so on. And so I started working on my book. And then the firm I was with at the time, which was Gear Audio, we saw a bit of a downturn, and it was time for me to leave. So I left that company, and I went around, and I interviewed at Ward Beck and McCurdy and a bunch of places, and I had to decide what to do with myself, and I decided to start my own business in the consulting end of things, which is really probably what I wanted to do all along. But in Canada in those days, there weren't too many places to work if you wanted to be a designer. So I started my own business, and that was 20 years ago. We started out pretty small in a bedroom, just like all these recording studios that start in garages and basements these days. I started in a bedroom. And boy, the first big break we got was Studio One at TV Ontario. I did that project, and then Sounds Interchange came along, and I got involved in the expansion of Sounds. Then it looked like there were going to be a series of other projects. This was in the early 90s. And then the whole audio industry, at least the recording side and production side, really started to change dramatically, and all of those projects just fell away, and our business got more involved in other things like audio-visual systems, and at the same time, we were pursuing performing arts center work, and that work started to take off. Our first big project was North York Performing Arts Center. On the basis of that, we got more and more work. So that was 20 years ago. Today we're much bigger, much more organized. We're doing projects around the world, and we're going to continue to do that. It's been a great journey, and I'm not done yet. I'm not quite sure where we're going to end up. We continue to find new markets. We're working in Dubai, and got a project in Moscow, and certainly keeping the 20 people working for us busy is a good challenge, but it's one that I'm going to look forward to. One of the interesting challenges that faces us as an organization today is simply the fact that a lot of what was cutting-edge engineering is actually becoming almost commoditized. And so a lot of the work that we would agonize over years and years ago is done by a database program or an AutoCAD routine or whatever. And so on the one hand, you're challenged with the fact that there's lots of inexpensive labor overseas, which can do engineering work quite easily, and the other, so there's that challenge as an engineering company, and then the other side of that is how can we on this side of the ocean make ourselves as absolutely efficient as possible so that we can compete with those kinds of low-cost engineering resources, because the engineering part is becoming an off-the-shelf, commoditized thing. There's an awful lot about our business that's a lot more understood and a lot more sort of off-the-shelf. So the challenge, I believe, going forward is essentially the one of what I would call the creative economy. That's not a new term. And we see ourselves being involved in the very top layer of the projects, not as much as engineers, but as consultants, understanding the client's requirements, the client's vision, and putting together essentially a program that will deliver on what they're trying to achieve as an organization. The engineering side is a consequence of that. So from the point of view of protecting our sort of intellectual property and pushing that forward, which of course is what we're always trying to do, is find the fun, exciting stuff to work on. That's where we see ourselves bringing the value. So so being a part of the creative economy is where I think we need to be, and what we're striving to do. So much of what goes on nowadays has a very, very large IT component to it. Most of the signal processing that occurs nowadays is done in a computer, and those signals are transmitted over data lines, and that's becoming a very important part of the business, because that's where you're able to get your economies of scale and make a lot of things happen in an exciting and a fast way, which is really what everybody seems to want these days. So part of our ongoing education program at work is bringing more and more IT into the office. We manage our own IT systems, and we have several guys who are pretty savvy at that. And I think being on top of the IT subject is going to be critical to everybody in our industry moving forward. And we see that today with the young people who come in who've got great computer skills, and as a result are very fast at doing CAD work and using CAD tools and all of that. It's makes older folks like me thankful that those younger people are there.